I'm only going to use one prop, and this is a yoga belt, but you can use a scarf, you can use a regular just belt or a piece of rope, anything that is not elastic. So elastic bands are really nice to use sometimes, but today we'll just use a belt for that static resistance. But we'll leave it to the side. We won't start with it right away. And we'll find a sitting position. At the moment I'm sitting on my shins. You can sit on your shins. You can sit cross-legged. You might put something under your hips if you find that you really scrunch into a ball. So we want our starting position to be long through the spine, whatever the legs look like. If they look straight, if you're coming up to sit on something. The priority is the pelvis up through the head and getting this long center line comfortable and stacked. So once you find that, whatever the legs are doing, go ahead and close the eyes for a second. I'm going to turn the palms upwards so that I'm sure that I'm not trying to hold myself up by grabbing the knees. And this also swivels the shoulders open, broadens across the collarbones, opens across the chest. And just establish your awareness on that spinal column, that stack, grounding through the hips and lifting through the head. And really thinking of those 2 points, the hips and the head, is like the north and south pole of the spine. So there's that rooting down and that sprouting up, and at that column between those 2 points. It becomes obvious quite quickly that the breath is constantly affecting the curve in that spinal shape. So placing your attention on the spine quickly segues into placing attention on your breath. And then from here, starting to guide the breath into a certain shape. So we're using a certain kind of breath to prepare for strong movement, for yoga poses, for body weight movement. Guiding the pulsing action of the breath up into the ribs so that the muscles around the hips or on the lower core can just gently hug and support. It's not a crunch. So the belly is still really long, but it's a lifting of the pelvic floor, a lifting, a subtle gathering of the low back muscles, subtle gathering of the low belly muscles. So you just feel that you're gently hugging up around the pelvis, which is going to limit the breath a little bit, but also expand it more deeply into the ribs, into the back, into the chest. So there's kind of a floating effect, getting taller on your inhale. And keeping that height as you become narrow and supported on your exhale. So there's a zipping up. I like to say like you're zipping an internal jumper right from the base of the pelvis all the way up and out, all the way up through the throat, up and out the sinuses as you complete your exhale. And that connecting the base of the pelvis all the way up through the spine, all the way up into the head, will hopefully help drop any tension or misalignment that we were carrying in the shoulders, the neck, the head, softening the muscles of the face, around the ears, around the scalp. And of course, we aren't going to be holding neutral, stacked with gravity like this for our whole practice, but generally speaking, this breath technique is going to serve us well, even when we leave neutral. And from here, open the eyes if they aren't already. And just start to play with the shoulders a little bit. So I'm going to circle back. And circle forward. And then we'll play with that belt. And again, I'm just choosing something that isn't too elastic. This is quite long, so I'm just going to fold it in half so it isn't annoying me flapping around the room. But you're going to take your belt, however long, a little bit wider than the shoulders, and really pull it apart and feel the shoulders frame out a little bit wider. And so now we have two actions. I have the length of the spine, so that north-south axis, and now we've got east and west as well. So like the 4 points of a compass, up through the head, down through the hips, and then broad through the shoulders. And then I'm going to take that belt just framed over the head. So I'm not trying to pop into extension. I'm just pressing it to the ceiling, and I'm still pulling it apart. So I've got north, south, east, and west, and I'm doing my best not to let this happen. Yeah. Crunch the belly a little bit. I'm offering it up, but I'm also keeping the spine neutral. Now at this point, if sitting on the floor is getting a bit awkward for you, or if the feet are starting to complain, you can come up to kneeling and still get the same work done. I'm just framing the shoulders, lifting, framing up through the back of the throat, down through the hips or the knees if you've come to kneeling. So if this works, stay here. If you need to switch position, switch position. But even as there's no change from the outside, I'm still keeping those 4 compass points. So I'm thinking north, south, east, west without popping the rib cage forward. And then from here, I'm going to create a little bit of a twist and just see how far it can go before I lose my alignment. So things that might happen, or I might curl into a ball, or I might start to accidentally bend to the side. So I'm just simply twisting along that center axis. So I'm trying to specifically wake up the obliques, which are the diagonal muscles across your core. And wake up the shoulders a little bit too. And waking up that upper postural muscles up through the back. And come back to center. Take a moment, realign, and then squeeze in the other direction. And again, if you're kneeling, you can still get this done, just being conscious of the pelvis staying square, so you don't want to twist from the knees. So I'm consciously waking up my obliques. You might be sitting on the shins, you might be cross-legged, it all works. And then come back. So drop it down and roll out the shoulders. We'll pick up the belt again when we come to standing, but we'll switch directions for a second. Come to all fours, start to wake up the hands. So I just shared a little video on hand techniques, so have a little look at that. Just to make sure that you're not just dumping into the wrists, especially if you're new to this style of movement. Now once you've taken the time to awaken the hands a little bit, and you're thinking about how you're meeting the floor, and I'm actually going to take the hands wide, so notice the change. My hands are going to come out off of the mat, and the fingers are turning out east and west. My arms are going to stay pretty straight, so I'm going to do my best not to bounce in the elbows. This is not a press up from the elbows. I'm going to try to keep the arms framed. I'm going to move from my back. So the shoulders squeeze and the shoulders press. And I can feel the scapula sliding across my back. So this is moving across the east and west axis, so to speak. So it's happening here. I'm kind of broadening and retracting through the shoulders. It's not sliding north and south. So at no point am I shrugging up into my neck. Notice the neck is nice and long the whole time. Now if you're feeling pretty strong, you're welcome to lift the belly and work this in a plank position, which takes a little more power and concentration. A lot of us might just be getting the hang of manipulating the shoulders like this and staying on all fours. Either way, just getting into a little more detail. And I'm going to curl up the toes, roll up to a kneeling position, or if it's an option, I'm going to sit back. I'm going to try to stretch the soles of the feet for a second. Wrap your knuckles together and just continue to massage the wrist for a second. And I'm also going to take the opportunity to massage the neck. So I'm stretching the feet, warming up the wrists, rolling through the neck. One more breath here. And then again, come back to all fours, unhook the feet, turn your fingers out so we have this kind of A-frame shape, like teepee pole shape with the arms. And this time, again, the neck is nice and long, but I'm just going to rock from side to side. And I'm dipping a shoulder, and noticing how that influences the rib cage, the spine, and encourages me to twist. And I'm going to follow that encouragement. I'm going to look up and look up. This one you could do in a plank, but I think it might just be a distraction from that nice little twisting influence. So the shoulders influence your twist, obliques influence your twist. The neck, the swivel of the neck and the eyes influence your twist as well. Good. So now, and you can do this in a plank or on all fours, I'm going to kind of combine these two actions. So we've got this going, and then we've got this going. And if you combine the two, you're kind of barrel rolling, washing machining through the shoulders. And I'm doing my darndest not to bounce the elbows around. My arms are staying pretty straight. And you can be muscular about this if you want to roll in a plank. Takes a little more strength and dexterity through the shoulder girdle. And then reverse directions. Again, knees up, knees down. Totally up to what suits your body. Kneeling looks like this. We'll bring the hands back onto the mat. Take the hands diagonally out in front of you, plugging in those nice strong hands so you're not shoving your wrists. We took all this time to warm up the shoulders, so they should be nice and broad, keeping that 4 points of the compass idea as you press back to your dog. That way you don't create an overhead press that scrunches into the back of your neck. A really downward dog is an overhead press. And so think of it like that because they're upside down. Plug in the hands, spread the shoulders, shake off your neck. Nod your head yes, shake it no. Keep pulling the hips up and back, start to bring your attention down into the legs. Take a few deep, clean, deliberate breaths, slow the heart rate, settle into first downward dog of the practice. I'm going to roll up onto the tippy toes, zip the belly, so gathering those muscles around the hips, supporting your way forward, round your way forward into a plank. So we're working a lifted, slightly rounded cat-shaped plank. Use your bum to crawl under and help support the sacrum. Use the abs to lift from underneath and support the back of the waist. Use the chest so the front line's nice and strong as you push the floor away, spreading the shoulders, and still my neck is long. So there's still thinking about the 4 points of the compass. Head forward, hips long, back, and the shoulders wide and pressing. And dive back to your dog. So if full plank doesn't suit your body, you can still get loads of work in half plank. We'll do another one and I'll demonstrate the gentler option, but you can keep it strong like you did the first time if you want. Up on the tippy toes, curl forward. So you're going to keep this cat shape, and even if full plank doesn't suit you, if you've got low back stuff or whatever's going on, I'm still really zipped up, yeah? So it's a strong belly moment, whether I'm carrying my full body weight or the knees are down. I'm thinking about The head being nice and long, shoulders being nice and wide, and I'm recruiting my chest. My pecs are working, solar plexus is gathering, belly is gathering. And then you can dive back to dog once more. Good. So check in with the feet. Bring the heels maybe a little bit wider, especially if you're tight in the hips. It's up to you how wide you choose to go. I want my feet to be neutral, which means the ankles are kind of hidden back behind me. My toes are pointing right in my face. Kneecaps are pointing exactly out the top of the mat. Start to walk your hands back, back, back as you load into those nice solid footprints. Nice and bouncy in the knees, melty in the spine. This is our first forward fold, so I'm really not interested in straight lines. Be a little bit liquid and loose. Play with this shape. Good. Just being soft, even if you like to take a more muscular path, just for the first one. Bounce the knees and slowly, sequentially roll up through the spine, stacking vertebrae disc, vertebrae disc. I'm going to turn palms open, biceps open. Reach through this T shape on my way up to overhead. I'm turning my thumbs to the back of the room, which will help me keep that 4 points of the compass, shoulders going wide. Just pause here for a second, finding that north-south compass point duality, reaching up and rooting down, mobilizing the breath through the rib cage while the muscles around the hips gently gather and support. And then we'll bring the hands back to center. Fingertips, knuckles, palms pressing into each other. Take a moment to really frame the shoulders. And again, feel the compass points here. Good. So, gathering the belt. We'll play a little bit more with the shoulders and we'll see how that relates to more of a solid flow. So, I'm going to square my feet. This time I'm going to go maybe a little bit wider with the belt. I'm going to take it up overhead, and this time I'm going to let the stretch melt open across the chest. So I'm not being so square and framed. I'm just going to play with a little bit of an opening. My rib cage really wants to pop, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that, but if I do kind of hug back a little bit and keep it more square, I'll be clearer in where the stretch is happening, and I want the stretch to be through the pecs, anterior deltoid, for the moment. Maybe you feel it extending down into the biceps, if the biceps are a little bit tight. Make sure your neck is free and easy here, that the shoulders aren't hiking up into your ears too much. There's still loads of intention down in the feet and up through the head. If this is too intense, you can give yourself a little more space. If it's too easy, if you're hyperextending all the way through, then go a bit narrower. We're just resting against the static tension of that belt. And then, just noticing the difference. Notice what happens when you allow the back bend to occur, and notice how your spine feels. So here's where, if I'm not using those muscles around the pelvis, it might feel really compressive on my back. So I'm still pushing down, really zipping up. I'm using that rib cage breath. My muscles are climbing up my back. So the description I use is like you're climbing a ladder. Feel those muscles climb up your spine like they're climbing a ladder. And this will support and arc up. I'm really lifting the low belly. So the whole thing is up more than forward. I'm not worried about sending the chest forward. I'm just activating the spine and reaching it back as little or as much as works for you. And then crunch, bring it back to neutral. Yeah, so notice the real difference in those intentions. So now I'm real square. The belt is straight up overhead. My feet are pressing down, glutes and belly. So I'm really trying to be narrow like a pressed flour, like squished flat. Good. Then change in intention. Climbing up through the back, allowing the chest to open, bringing the belt back behind me, looking for activation. The more I press through the floor, gather the thighs, glutes, belly, pelvic floor, climbing the spine like I'm climbing a ladder. This is a supported way of creating a back bend. It shouldn't feel heavy. If it does feel clunky in your back, it might be that there's some weakness or maybe some spinal stability stuff. Only go as far as your nervous system feels good. And come back to center. I'm going to keep the arms overhead. I know the shoulders, the arms are probably getting a little bit tired. That's a good thing. Lift through the head, press up through the belt, ground down through the feet once more. Notice the difference between allowing a back bend and really working to maintain your neutral. Good. I'm going to release it down. And just loop out the shoulders. I still have the belt. We'll counter some of that work. So I'm just going to leave my belt in my hand for a second because we'll use it in a minute. I'm going to take my stance a little bit wider, even my toes are coming out towards the edge of my mat. I'm going to squat back. I'm going to rest on the thighs. I'm just going to arch and curl here. And feel into a little more spinal movement. So I did a bit of twisting, a lot of warming up in the shoulders. But I want to get a little more interesting in the spine. Take a few breaths with the eyes up and your tail really up in the air. See, can you breathe here while you get a sense of climbing up the ladder? So I'm looking for a little run up through the spinal muscles, retracting the shoulders. And see, can I breathe here? At the same time, keeping some low belly support. And then in contrast, when you're ready, I'm going to curl. I'm going to tuck the tail under. I'm going to look down, really zip the six-pack, close the chest, spread your shoulders across your back like you're trying to spread up into the back of your t-shirt. The head is dropped, looking down at the belly button. And I'm noticing the pattern here. And breathing. And then push the floor, roll it all the way back up, all the way back up. I'm going to take the belt behind my back and maybe using about a handprint or maybe 2 handprints length as I pull against the belt. If you're super open in the shoulders, you're welcome to just get rid of the belt and lace the hands. But even those of us that are pretty open might like a little extra space here because it just changes the work. Come to the back of the mat if you're not there already. Up to you how wide you set the feet, but hopefully they're neutral, wherever they are. Draw it nice and tall. Start to pull on the belt and take the arms a little higher up, so I'm really retracting the shoulders. The neck isn't over gripping in response to that work. Up through the throat, lift the belt. Bend the knees, sink into a little lightning pose here. I'm going to swing my bum way back to counter the head coming forward. So again, thinking of the hips and the head as opposite ends. They kind of counterbalance each other. Taking the grip up and over. And slowly melt the spine. So first thinking about getting the drop through the spine. Nod your head yes, shake your head no. Then think about pulling on the belt and taking the arms further up overhead. And sure, there will be a bit of a hamstring stretch. I really am not interested in straight legs because for a lot of us, if we think about straightening the legs, it's going to lift us out of this deep fold, this melt through the spine, this work in the shoulders. And if you're really flexible and the legs are straight, go for it. And when you're ready, the next time you exhale, you can drop the belt. I'm going to leave it down at the back of my mat so it's not in my way. And just making sure that all 10 fingertips can be on the floor. Yeah, so if I'm up here and I can't quite hit the ground, bend the knees. Make sure your hands can melt to the ground so it can be a little more animal-like in all 4 limbs as you liquid walk out to your downward dog. Set up the hands, broaden the shoulders, lift the hips up and back, finding downward dog. And then again, up on the tippy toes, roll forward into a plank. Strong front body moment. Whether the knees are up or knees are down, it's up to you. This time, keep the elbows close. Make your way down through that chaturanga, which is like the bottom of a press up. And we're going to land all the way down to the floor. Pull the feet way down the back of your mat. Slide your thumbs nice and low. So I'm going to take the hands back. Notice how square the elbows are. I'm going to grip and pull. Just a little bit of a cobra. Again, climbing the ladder. Notice how the behavior in the shoulders really influences the behavior in your spine. Meltdown. Climb up through the spine, climb that ladder. Shoulders retracting. So it's very hard to climb if the shoulders are moving down. Meltdown. Just continue with your breath. Your inhale's floating you up. And your exhale's peeling you down with control. At no point am I clamping into my neck, my jaw, my ears. You can look around. Good. And then this time, the next time you peel up, just checking that you have that climbing the ladder effect, that climbing up through the spine. Check that your legs are engaged, so my pointy toes are pressing down. You might feel the knees engage up, thighs engage up. Then, as you pull up into upward dog, I'm keeping that climb. And notice how the shoulders affect the spine. They coordinate with each other. So as I come down, I'm going to move my shoulders forward. Boom. And that kicks off that conversation, chest, belly, hips, rolling back to your dog. So generally speaking, I'm going to bring the shoulders forward when I'm curling forward and bring the shoulders back when I'm arching back. That might seem obvious, but I think sometimes that detail gets lost when we go through this vinyasa transition. So we'll just point it out where they are along the way. Up on the tippy toes as I roll forward, shoulders forward. Yeah, so in my cat shape, my chest is closing, my shoulders come forward. And I'm going to take either a soft or strong path down. We'll all meet up on the floor. But then really consciously shift gears. Loop. Boom. Now climbing up the spine, the shoulders are behind you, facilitating that lift through the heart. And now we switch again. Boom. Shoulders come forward, picking you up, diving you back as you activate the belly. Good. So from here, from this dog, take your right leg up into the air. Roll and curl, step up into the hands. You can step or grab your foot, bring it forward, smooth, or a few steps in there, it's all good. I'm going to rock back and roll up, and I'm going to do my best to keep the back heel in the air so my hips are nice and neutral. Palms up, biceps up as you reach out. And on your exhale, bring the hands to center as you sink into the back knee. Inhale, sweep up. And the hands come back to center. If you're in kind of a narrow space and you don't have space to reach out, you can kind of swivel. So watch how I corkscrew the arms so I still arrive in this position with the thumbs to the back of the room. It's a narrow space. And if you've got more space, really dramatize up through the palms, swivel through the armpits. Either way is nice. And this time, we'll reach up through the throat, up through the fingers, down into the hips. Stack your knee over your ankle. The back leg looks to straighten a little further back, however far it goes. You're going to turn to your right leg. So your right arm is going to spin behind. Notice the hand gesture. I'm going to high five And I'm interested in bringing the front shoulder forward, back shoulder back. Notice how that facilitates your twist. If you feel plugged in on your foundation, the eyes are going to lead you around in your twist as well. Lower core stabilizing, upper core breathing, sprouting. Good, cartwheel back down. So I'm going to drop the back knee. And I'll wind up turning away from you guys here. I'm going to leave this foot here. This back foot can pivot a little bit, as is natural however far you go. But notice how the hands kind of walk around. My hands are off to the left-hand side of my mat. I'm going to start to press this knee a little bit wide. Seeing that little conversation in the inner thigh. My hands keep walking out, walking out, walking out. Bowing, starting to open the hips a little bit for the first time. Note how my back foot swiveled, kind of windshield wipered around to the side to facilitate this turn. And come back up, swivel your hands back onto your mat. Your back foot, windshield wipers back to start. I'm going to bring my right hand back around, so the knee is in the chest. Pick up your back knee, push the floor, kick up to the sky. And we'll meet up in downward dog. And it's up to you. In between sides, you can either just chill out, take a child's pose, or come with as we roll again through plank, upward dog, downward dog. If you're coming with for this vinyasa, think about those gears in the shoulders. Boom, they come back, upward dog. Boom, they press forward, rolling back to downward dog. And take the left leg up, way up on your tippy toes, push the floor. Maybe it's one big smooth mindful step, maybe it's grabbing the foot and bringing it forward, see where you're at. Back heel is up in the air, square the hips. Inhale, palms up, biceps up if you have the room. As you sink into the legs, or maybe just twisting and swiveling. Either way, I'm really consciously arriving at that nice frame across the chest. Expanding with your inhales up, sinking into your exhales down. Each time, hopefully feeling a little more integrated, more cohesive. Good. Inhale when you're ready, peel up. Thumbs are to the back of the room, getting that broadness, that swivel. Bend the front knee, back leg looks to straighten a little further back. You can eke the feet out if you have the range of motion. Layered on top of this shape, I'm going to twist obliques, shoulders, neck. So notice how the back shoulder squeezes back, front shoulder reaches forward. That feeds your twist. Up through the throat, looking to the back of the mat. Bend that front knee. Come back into the breath. And eventually cartwheeling down. I'm going to drop the back knee. I'm going to bring the hands inside and over. And I'm going to pause on my way. So noticing the back foot is free to windshield wiper. I'm going to push this knee away just to remind it to stay in line with the toes. So the intention is to start to say hi to the inner thigh a little bit. Then your hands might walk out. Bowing, shaking off the head, playing with the shoulders. Take a little experimental moment here. And walking the hands back in, swivel your foot back to center. I'm going to bring that left hand back around so the knee is in the chest. Pick up the back knee, push the floor. Kick up to the sky. Pedal off the legs. Again, it's your choice. Excuse me. Might be a child's pose. Might be a plank, upward dog, downward dog. Think about what gear the shoulders are in to facilitate what direction you're going in the spine. I'm going to meet up back here in dog. So from this dog, take your right leg back up into the air, roll and curl, find your way into a lunge, rock back, peel your way up, arms reaching overhead, thumbs to the back of the room. First, frame up so get the compass points through the upper body, then the front knee, back leg reaches back. And again, play here. So when we had the belt earlier, we were oscillating between kind of crunching the front and trying to get neutral, and then climbing up the spine and activating into a back bend. So it's a deliberate sprouting up rather than kind of a belly flop slouch. Yeah. So in your own time, experiment here. I'm going to crunch. I'm going to arch, climbing up the spine. And crunch. And climbing up the spine. And if your shoulders really start to drive you nuts, you can rest your hands behind your head and still get the crunch. And then climbing through the spine. And then come back to neutral. I'm going to take the hands around behind the back. Now we don't have the belt, so wrapping the hands, and hopefully that's available to you. I'm going to loop the shoulders, lift through the heart, get that climb up through the spine, bend the front knee as I sink into the hips. And there's obviously going to be a back bend here, spinal extension here. And I'm making sure that there's a support up through both the front and back of the pelvis. So I'm not kind of slouching down onto the back, down onto the hips. And come out down. Plug in the hands, kick back up, three-legged dog, both feet on the floor, pause in your downward dog, take the left leg up, roll and curl, step into the hands, rock back, roll your way up, swivel palms up, biceps up, thumbs to the back of the room, opening up your lunge. And then from here, using this as a place to play with alignment and intention, I'm alternately opening up and really zipping and crunching back to neutral. Notice how the back knee is probably going to bend with this. It kind of has to. So the more I try to draw back to neutral, the back knee is going to come in to facilitate that, climbing up through the spine. Again, you can bring the hands behind the head, even just as an experiment. Notice how that changes the behavior in the upper body. Shoulders shifting gears with you. And see, can you come back to neutral, wrap the hands around, weave that grip. One hand pulls against the other as you loop the shoulders back, and I'm thinking up as I deepen into the lunge. Try to connect all the dots through this back leg, up into the hip, up into the side, up into the chest. And gently let it go. Hands to the floor. Kick up to the sky. Pedal off the legs. Good. I'm going to take you over vinyasa or taking rest. We'll meet up in a few breaths in downward dog. Arching and curling. Building strength and support up through the core. Good. And this time look forward. Keep the hands nice and plugged in. I'm going to tiptoe walk up into the top of the mat until I've walked as far as I can go. If you get stuck part way, your hands can come back to your feet. You just take a little minute here. taking your deliberate path to standing, whether it's a flat back or whether you're sprouting like a seed up through the spine. Inhale. And the hands come back to center. So I'm going to turn open just for a second. Take a little bit of a horse stance just to notice how the legs, glutes, low belly feed up through the spine, and it'll support where we're going with all this. So I'm going to take the knees and the toes out to a diagonal. I'm going to press up through the throat, get the 4 points of the compass going, high five the hands across the room, sink into the legs. And I'm putting this pose here because I really want to think about how my glutes are feeding up into the spinal muscles. Yeah, how the inner line of the legs feeds up into the core support. So you're only sinking in enough so that you can experiment. And I'm rocking forward and I'm rolling back. I'm lighting up the legs. And I'm going to do a couple of mindful reps. I'm not going to count reps. Yeah. What I'm doing is I'm going to press, bring the hands back in, sink into a squat, press out, bring the hands back in. And the reason why I'm doing reps is I'm really trying to wake up the mechanics in the legs, feeding back up into the hips, back into the core. Trying to wake up pretty much every detail I can find. Check in with the behavior of the feet, the shins, the quads on the front of the thigh, the hamstrings on the back of the thigh, the inner thigh, the outer thigh, low belly, pelvic floor, glutes. So the more we wick that strength up into the core, the more empowered our back bends are going to become. So this is hopefully not counting reps and burly workout, but just kind of switching on all the lights in the house. Just running around, switching on all the little muscle fibers I can feel. And I'm going to turn back in. And hopefully you'll see how that helps support your shapes. So we're here at the top of the mat. Palms up, biceps up, thumbs to the back of the room. Sink into a lightning pose. Sink back into the hips to pull pressure off the knees. Again, any kind of squatting stuff here, so good for stabilizing low back issues. Most of us have had low back stuff at some point. Squats are great. And melt down, hands on the floor. If the legs are straight, they're straight. If they're bent, they're bent. Melt the spine. Feel what benefits you the most. Lean fully into the handprints, whether you step or hop. Find your vinyasa. We'll meet up in a few breaths, but take your path through plank, upward dog, downward dog. Now take the right leg up into the air. Zip and curl, step into the hands. Rock back. Roll up, inhale, reach, and then I'm going to switch directions. I'm going to cactus the arms. When the shoulders move back behind you, they help to open the chest. And I'm really making sure that I'm climbing the ladder of the spine as I sprout up and spread the collarbones. If it feels good, you can look up, palms open, sink into the hips. Take your time here. It doesn't have to be big. If it looks pretty neutral, if you're just finding that feeding up, legs into glutes into core, if it looks pretty neutral, that's fine. As long as you're getting that climbing action, that sensation, right up through your spinal column. If it looks fancier, if you're throwing your head back, that's fine too. And come back up, melt down, hands to the floor, kick to the sky. Both feet on the ground. Take the left leg up, zip and curl, step into the hands. So thinking about those gears in the shoulders, if you're in forward or reverse. So arms up overhead, we're kind of in neutral here. And as we move into back bend gear, my shoulders move behind me into back bend gear, encouraging that climbing of the ladder. Wicking, so even though I'm sinking into a lunge, legs, glute, belly, find all of your resources in the lower body to help boost it up, like you're squeezing toothpaste out of the tube.
How far you arc back depends on what feels good for you. Let your breath be your guide, sensation be your guide. Gather it back in, melt back down, kick up to the sky, three-legged dog, both feet on the floor, big breath, wiggle out your dog. Take your right leg up, roll and curl, step into the hands, rock back, roll your way up. Inhale, reach, so starting from this neutral template, crescent pose. Now I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to wrap my hands around my back, squeeze the shoulders together, feeding a back bend. And this time the arms are down below. Now this reaching down, be a little more shovey in the spine. So you're a little more mindful of gathering up through the legs, through the core, using those lower body muscles that we found in that horse stance. Maybe this hand creeps a little further back, and maybe the head drops back. That's a big maybe. Good. And keep this shape. Look forward. Notice how my back heel, boop, falls to the floor. Notice how my foot inches to the edge of my mat. And I'm going to wiggle out this nice wide stance. Notice how the belly is at a diagonal. So I'm not all the way turned away from you guys to the side of the room. My belly's at the left side of my mat. The left corner of my mat. You're going to set the knee over the ankle. Once you've spread out your stance, find the same strength and integrity as horse stance. I'm going to roll up through the spine and slowly bow. Drop your head, not the spine. So this position is super interesting because my shoulders are moving back and yet the spine is melting. It's a real different conversation. Look at that back foot. Ground the pinky toe, ground the outer blade of the foot. Have a look at the arch of the foot behind you, fire up. Now if this is too harsh on your back, put your hands on the floor. We're all going to do that in a second. Take one more big breath. We'll all bring our hands to the floor. I'm just going to come up a little bit. This is like a big version of what we did kneeling. I'm going to push my hand and just check that my knee is over my toes, and then I'm going to walk away from it and maybe melt. And maybe those of you that are real bendy, you might drop your elbows on the floor and still have a lot of energy in that back foot. You can hang out here for as long or as little as you want. Make it work for you. And peel it back up. Walk your hands back onto the mat. Lift your back heel. Melt the back knee down. Pull the heart nice and long. And as we head towards a bit of a lizard pose, I'm looking for the knee to stay over the heel. So that's what that little hand adjustment earlier was about. Take your favorite lizard pose. This might be enough. Maybe the hands are coming forward. Maybe the elbows are dropping down. Maybe you have a different variation. Make this work for you. Even though it looks so melted and surrendered, I still have a lot of energy, legs into the core. I'm still supporting the spine up through. And bring the hands back in. Fire up the back knee. So there's an opportunity here to do some strength work if you know it. Otherwise, I'm just going to kick back mindfully and try to pick up that foot. Nice and controlled. Up to the sky. Pedal off the legs. Take a big breath and we'll play with the second side. So I'm going to take the left leg up. Push the floor. Step into the hands. Rock back. Roll your way up. From this crescent pose template, settling in, you're going to wrap the hands around behind your back. One hand pulls against the other. This starts the engine of spinal extension. As I sink into the legs, I'm finding that isometric reaching and hugging. There's action and counteraction, which squeegees and supports, squeezes up through the muscles of the pelvis, guiding the breath up into the heart. Maybe you're arcing back. Maybe you're keeping the head forward and just finding some strengthening and some intention, noticing how the glutes feed up to the spinal muscles, climbing the spine. Bring it back up to neutral. Notice how the back heel falls. Notice how the front foot ekes over towards the edge of the mat. So I'm kind of heel toeing my pinky over. Belly button's at the right hand corner of the mat, so I'm not all the way off to the side of the room. And just sink into your lunge, massaging your stance here. Grounding the back foot. So here's a refreshing combination. As you peel up, think of like casting a fishing line. So I'm really pulled back, my shoulders are back, and my shoulders are going to stay back as I bow. Dropping the head, arms reaching up overhead, squeezing. So rhomboids, knitting the shoulders together, levator scapulae, elevating the shoulders. Having a look at that back foot, continuing to plug in the little engine behind you, sending you forward. If this is too much, you can repeat the kneeling version. And then I'm going to bring the hands to the floor eventually. And I'm going to start to walk the hands out, and I'm just going to check that this knee isn't following me. I'm just going to push the knee back into alignment. This is going to keep a little heat, little intention in your outer left hip. As you slowly walk the hands out, I'm not trying to collapse too heavy on my arms. I really have a strong engine back here still as I melt and sink in. Maybe some of you, if you're open in the hips, you're dropping to the elbows and still trying to anchor back. Make sure I haven't totally clamped into my neck. Make sure that knee is still pointing outward. This is a big maybe. You might be up here, you might be back here. Yeah, see what works for you. Eventually we'll come back up, and I'm going to lift my back heel. I'm going to square my heart forward, hands are back on the mat. And if you know the funky strength stuff, please feel free. Otherwise, I'm just going to lean in and try to mindfully take that foot up, kicking back to the ceiling. Pedaling off both feet on the floor. The last opportunity to run through a plank, upward dog, downward dog. See where this takes you. It might not look like that at all. You might be taking sips of water. We'll meet up and downward dog. Drop to kneeling. Sink to child's pose. And take this opportunity to just kind of cat style the spine from side to side. Or maybe walking your hands, both hands over to the right, and both hands over to the left. Closing the standing work. I'm really seeing child's pose as a moment to hit the reset button. Okay, so from this child's pose, I'm going to come up and bring your belt back up to the side of your mat, or you left it behind you earlier. So I'll set it over to the side, and we're going to start to switch gears. Come down to legs, belly, chest on the floor. We'll do a little more specific spinal strengthening. So a lot of us with low back stuff, we're afraid to strengthen here, but as long as we're working within a range of motion that feels like it's not annoying a chronic injury, the more strengthening you do, the more shoring up, the more stabilizing you'll do. And the glutes are super important with that, but we just want to make sure that we're clear when we're using the glutes or when we're using the rotators. So I'm just going to come up to the elbows. This is a real simple way to clarify where you are. There's lots of fun ways. This is a good one. So I'm going to come up onto the elbows, and I'm just going to bend a knee. So swing the leg from side to side. This is rotation. Yeah? So if that foot collapses in, and you really kind of encourage that, like you squeeze into that, you'll probably feel a little squeeze out here. These are your rotators, and they love to join in the fun. So when we're extending, when we're trying to use our glutes, sometimes the rotators will take over the action. So I'm aware that I'm trying not to let my foot fall in too much, and I'm also trying not to let my knee go out too much. So this will happen as well. This kind of shape is when the rotators are taking over, when the glutes are trying to work. So just experiment with the other leg. I'm just going to bend my knee. I'm just going to windshield wiper from side to side. I'm going to let that knee fall in, or that foot fall in, and then kind of squeeze into that action, and you'll find that little back hip pocket muscles. Those are the deep six, the deep external rotators. They're friends with the glutes, but sometimes they kind of shout over the glutes, shall we say. So just clarifying their roles. I want to keep my foot in the air rather than letting it fall in, and rather than letting the knee come out. So that being said, I'm going to come back to the first leg. I'm going to kick my heel, and then I'm going to try to pick that foot up off the floor, and the foot might come in a little bit, or the knee might try to go out to the side, or maybe it just doesn't go anywhere at all. But I'm just gently strengthening the backside. I'm also keeping some quiet tone in the elbows, the hands, the shoulders. And then dropping the foot down, onto the other side. Notice how I'm kicking the sole of the foot. This will help wake up, kicking the heel will help wake up the posterior chain. I'm going to drive up through that heel. And it's a really small action. Like even just getting some movement in the femur here is an achievement. And I'm really focusing on not letting this happen. Yeah, so I don't want to twist the leg. I want to lift the leg clean up. You're making the glutes perform more specifically. And these guys tie in with that climb up through the back. Good. And just bring your head onto flat hands. Shake off the legs, breathe down into your belly. So, since I'm sharing this practice with maybe people who are brand new to me or people who've been practicing a long time, see what's appropriate for you. Yeah, you might just repeat what we did, you might just stay at a more humble level, or you might be super open and pushing more advanced poses. So I'm going to stagger this into steps and you stay at whichever plane you want to stay at. So I'm going to come back up, I'm going to bend the right leg, and then I'm going to bring the left hand across. So option one, I'm just going to reach back, push down, and square forward. And there's a lot here. Again, the knee might try to pop out to the side, so I'm going to keep it contained. I'm going to square the heart forward. Next option is maybe grabbing the foot, making a little one-legged bow, or those of us that want to play. We did a lot of shoulder work. We've done some prep in the hips. You might take your belt. I'm going to loop it around my foot. Notice how I'm using like loads of belt. You can be really generous. And even if you're pretty new to this stuff, as long as it's feeling good, feel free to play with it, yeah? I'm using like tons and tons of belt. It depends on however long your equipment is at home. I'm using loads of belt just so I can get activation and not worry about pushing flexibility. But I'm going to raise that leg and I'm going to lift my elbow forward. Yeah, so just this activation here. If you have a long enough piece of equipment, you can keep it real humble and just get the activation without necessarily having to be very flexible. I'm pointing my elbow forward, and as you feel more confident, you can choke up and tighten up the loop, which is going to deepen the conversation, feeling serratus open, getting that elbow to point forward. And if you feel good, you can again continue to tighten up. Some of you might have a full Kapotasana here eventually with the hands on the big toe joint. I'm not there yet. But I'm making sure that I'm still climbing the ladder. So I'm really activating the glutes, I'm activating up through the spine. I've got that squeegee action up through the core. Maybe you're raising that knee, maybe you're looking up. Or maybe you're taking a break, maybe you're finding another therapeutic action. As we really start to push flexibility, we get more individual, our little quirky patterns start to show up. So listening to your sensations more than anything else. And when you're ready, gently let it go. Try not to slingshot out of the pose. Bring your belt over to the other side. Setting up your Sphinx, gripping and pulling. So there's intention in my elbows, intention in my hands. I'm going to bend that knee, bringing the right hand across. Excuse me. I'm going to mush down, square the belly forward, chest forward, eyes forward. And if this feels good, maybe I'm going to grab and kick a little bit of a bow, that might be enough. And if you're bringing the shoulders into the conversation, I'm grabbing the belt, using loads of it as I square it forward again. Making sure my knee points back, making sure that elbow points forward. Being really humble at first, like use as much belt as you can. Keep it low, a little bit of a kick. Just activating. I'm hoping to keep that elbow pointing forward so I can swing clean through the shoulders. And if that's feeling good, you can head a little further. It's all maybes. You might just still be working bow, you might just keep your hand back on the toes, you might be back at strength work. You might have decided this is enough spinal extension. Just remembering to question what's going on in that left hip. I know I can't see that leg behind me, but I'm making sure that my knee is reaching to the back of the room and not popping out to the side. Eventually, in your own time, you'll ease it back down. Leaving the belt to the side. Dropping the head on flat hands. Take a big belly breath and just shake off the legs, shake off the hips. So the thing with back bends is we can't see behind us. And as a society, we all tend to sit and round forward more than we arch back. So we're kind of not that strong in that direction. We don't do it very often, so it's unfamiliar. And even those of us that do practice a lot, it tends to trigger more sensation. So like I do this stuff a lot, and I can feel it kind of echoing in my spine, but it's not in a bad way. Yeah, those muscles are just kind of like, oh, in the spotlight. But at first, that sensation can be kind of setting off alarm bells. You might be interpreting it as pain. And it's not, I'm not saying you should ignore pain, but just knowing that it's unfamiliar, and the more often you do it, the more confident the body will be. So don't write off your spinal flexibility if you didn't get far with that today. It's little drops in the bucket, getting more familiar with that language of extension and strength behind you to start to carry you up, starting to make bigger shapes over time. Yeah. But for now, drop your head on flat hands, shake off the legs. Create enough of an upward dog, just so you can dive back to all fours. And gently massage out the spine. Arching and curling. All of that strength work, all of that squeeging up through the spine, bringing the breath up into the chest and supporting with the muscles in the hips, firing up the glutes. Probably different patterns than we're used to. The more often we get into that new territory, the more familiar the landscape, the more familiar the sensations, maybe the less of a big deal it'll seem, the more balanced our movement will be, because, as I mentioned, we're real good at rounding forward. And take this time here as you massage out to take your favorite yoga poses, maybe pausing the video if you're inspired to keep practicing, which I hope you are. And don't lose the momentum of your flow. And take the time to play. And when you're ready, we'll head down towards stillness or sitting meditation if that feels more appropriate to you. After all the spinal work, so some melting on the floor might be nice for the spine. And as I head down towards the floor, I'm just going to bring the knees into the chest, rock and roll from side to side. So a nice one, if this stuff really tends to echo in your back, I'm going to make a little diamond shape. Notice how my hands are pretty far away from each other, and I'm going to take that diamond shape just under one hip and then the other. So again, my hands are pretty far away from each other. The knuckles should be pressing into the glutes, into the broad side of the hips. So it's all very wide. If your hands are too close together, you're probably just going to wind up on your skeleton and it's not very comfortable. So you're getting into the nice muscular tissue on either side of the sacrum. We're softening those glutes that were climbing up the spine into the spinal muscles. And then really take your time as you ooze down. I'm going to turn palms up. And slowly creep the feet out. Surrendering to the floor. Maybe if the back is still talking back to you, you can put pillows up under the knees or leave the knees bent. And hopefully you're good to melt out. And here I'm going to consciously drop the grip in the pelvis. Consciously allow the breath to reach down through the lower core, expanding down towards the belly button and the hips on the inhale. And really dousing the fire, so to speak. Switching off the intensity of the core work. Surrendering the length of the spine, surrendering, broadening across the shoulders. Feeling the breath slow, feeling the heart rate slow. And just stay.